How's the week been for you with the quarterback change?
Good. We've had a good week of preparation. We got one more practice, clean everything up, and it's been good.
How are you seeing Jackson handle this week?
Yeah, the thing that I like about Jax is throughout the whole process is he's always been the same person. Obviously, you're always a little more excited after you haven't been playing for a little bit, but he's handled it really well.
What makes you think he's ready? Like, what do you see that says, okay, he can handle himself in this kind of situation?
Well, I think it just goes all the way back to, the draft process and everything like that. What type of person he is and how he's going to prepare. We've had a plan for him. He's done really good with that plan. Has kind of answered all the questions and done a really good job with it. So.
When did you realize that was the case? Like, we'd be like, I guess you put him as a backup week one, that he was ready for that, and then this.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Dave said, though. Like, I don't think any rookie in the NFL is ready to play any position. I mean, you're going out there, you're playing football. But as far as just being ready for everything, I think that's hard for anybody. So you prepare the best you can. You go through everything, cross your T's, dot your I's, and then once you get out there, you're just going to play. And you trust your instincts, trust your preparation, and that's what he's going to do.
From your perspective now, you had week one and week two, you had obviously a 14-year veteran that you're preparing to get the next game. Is there anything extra or different that you've had to do preparation-wise with your room, with your QB1, so to speak, than what you have done the last 2 weeks?
I mean, not process-wise, but you always, no matter whoever the starter is, you tailor that to their learning style. You tailor that to what they like, how they absorb information. I think that's with anybody back there. Whether it's a 14-year veteran, first-year guy, coaching is teaching is the whole, thing that we always say. And when you're teaching and dealing with different learning styles, you just have to go ahead and change that maybe a little bit. But the process, how we install, how we talk about things, that doesn't change. Just how you get the information from yourself to the player.
How much do you have to simplify the game day menu kind of deal, though, as a result? Like, as you said, like, no one's ready. You don't want to sort of overload him on game day?
Yeah, and look, that's any player. You always are trying to test the limits of how much they can handle, how much they can't. So you go, you put stuff in, you see what they like, you see what they don't like, and then you tweak it from there. I think Jackson's handled all that stuff well, and I think he's ready to go with it.
Is there a moment in the scouting process, like when you go back through combine or whatever, that stood out to you that you're like, okay, this is a guy who could be a starting quarterback in New York? Do you have one specific thing that stands out? I know that's a hard ask.
I don't know if there was any one particular moment. It's just the more and more you get around Jackson and, know his personality and know who he is and just how he handles himself. He's very comfortable being himself. He can relate to a lot of people. So just throughout the whole thing, when we brought him in the building or when we went down there to see him at Ole Miss, just to see how he interacted with different members of the organization, that kind of gives you a good heads up about that.
Jackson has talked about wanting to provide a spark, right? Part of this week, has it been reminding him you don't have to do too much or play outside of yourself?
Yeah, that's and the funny thing about that is you always are trying to remind the quarterbacks about that, right? Because they're always the guy with the ball in their hands. They're always touching it on every play. So you want to balance that on every play with, hey, you don't have to play hero ball here. Just want to go ahead and play point guard, things like that. So I think that's what you try to say to anybody. Certainly when you're going ahead and getting your first start, maybe you emphasize it a little bit more. But again, he's shown that he's going to do that with a lot of the scenarios we put him in through training camp, whether it was the preseason games. He's done that, so that's a good sign.
A lot of teammates have referenced swagger when they talk about Jackson. What's the first incident that you kind of saw that in him?
I would definitely say when we were going through the process and he had that necklace on. And that was like one of the first things I asked him. And then, of course, you find out that it's, swiped from his sister's room and it's just, off of Amazon. So thought that was pretty, So, and he made it swaggy, so that was good.
How does swagger manifest itself in the meeting room with you? Because we see what we see on the field, but in the meeting room, I would imagine it's a little bit of a different environment, right? You're ready to learn. So how is Jackson in the meeting room? What is his personality there? How does he like to learn, like you said?
And I think like that word has changed over the years, right? Swag's kind of the new age word for it. We used moxie in the past, or it factor, or all that, right? I think that's all the same. I just think the word has changed to describe it a little bit. He's just got a really good way about him. He doesn't let things rattle him. I will say this was something we kind of stole from Tommy DeVito. It was always rule number one is don't panic. And Jackson, without knowing that, has kind of done that. No matter what scenario we put him in, he just, okay, got it. And just goes about his business and has fun with it. Doesn't take himself too seriously, but knows when to lock in. So there's a good balance with that. I would say that's his swag, his moxie, whatever you want to call it.
Is that part of the reason why you thought this week would be okay, as an organization thought this week would be okay, even though it's a Chargers defense that is pretty tough, and not maybe a soft landing spot for him?
Yeah, I would say I don't think there's any soft landing spot in the NFL, especially when you're going to make your first start as a rookie quarterback. It could have been week 1, week 17. I really don't think that matters. The Chargers have a really good defense. All the teams we're going to play in the future have a really good defense, so I don't think you can sit there and look at that and try to plan for that. No, I think it was just, okay, we're going with this. We made the decision. Let's go all in and get them as ready to go as we can.
Did you guys gain anything from the prep for the preseason finale when he started that game in terms of what the week was going to be like, and kind of configure what you were able to do this week to maybe what you learned from him that week?
Yeah, I think you always, those are always trial runs, right? What is he like? The conversations with him throughout the week of, hey, we're thinking of starting the game this way, or thinking of starting the game that way, or in this scenario, what do you want? Those are the more important things, I think, that happen throughout the week that you get in those scenarios when, he's going out starting a preseason game. You can kind of treat that as a dress rehearsal, if you will. So we got a lot of good things from that. Kind of seamless as far as that goes. So the meetings, the prep, we kind of had a dry run at that.
I know obviously we're hammering Jackson, but you do have 2 other veterans in this quarterback room. And, if Jameis's role didn't change, Russell certainly has. How has that dynamic played out for you this week? Your history obviously with all of them, but obviously with Russ too. And how have you seen that kind of manifest itself?
Yeah, they're pros, the ultimate pros. They've been great. They've helped. They've talked about things they've seen. So it's been really good.
Is that ever a situation where you're, as a coach, you say, okay, let's as much as you've spent time with these guys, let's see how it kind of plays out this week? Or were you pretty confident with how those guys were going to handle it?
No, I had full confidence and faith that those guys would handle it that way. There was no concerns there.
Last we talked, you talked about eventually the light would go on for Darius. I would imagine the light has gone on. What have you seen the last 2 games, and what do you like about what he's shown?
I think he's gotten better in every game that he's been out there. He had 2 pressures in the game on Sunday. There's some good stuff in the run game. And again, I seen the last 2 days in practice him take his game up even another notch. So that's what we want to keep doing, just trying to keep getting him to improve and keep him learning how to feel comfortable with the NFL game. But I'm happy where he is right now.
We spoke to you 2 weeks ago. It sounded like you didn't want to rush the process, but obviously injuries maybe kind of force that process. Like how does that go? You have to balance. Say you're on the 53, you're gonna play, and you don't want to rush it.
Honestly, the injury had nothing to do with him playing.
So
he was going to play in that game. Whether Nacho was going to play or not, he was going to play in that game. Now, the injury made a difference on how many reps he got in that game. You know what I mean? With Nacho being not playing, and he handled it well. And I just think the big thing is to make sure he doesn't go, I made it, and he understands that he's still got room to grow, and I'm going to keep my foot in his throat to make sure he does that.
What are you seeing from Elijah Garcia, a guy who keeps getting brought up? Obviously, you must like something there. What are you seeing from him?
He's long, he's physical, he plays with a motor. He's another one that's improved a ton since we first, got him off of the Broncos practice squad. And he's come a long way. And I like the temperament that he brings to our group. And he's hard to deal with because he's so long and he's powerful. So he's done a good job for us in the games that he's been playing.
What have you seen from Dex? I think everyone's kind of waiting for that game where he just totally, takes over. I know that that's not necessarily what you can do at that position all the time, but just what have you seen in these first 3 games?
I think he's playing like Dex. He had 2 quarterback hits in the game. He had 3 pressures in the game, but, nobody in the world gets double teamed as much as Dex does. He gets double teamed on almost every single play, and he deals with it. He doesn't complain about it. It's just his world. Once you become, that elite of a player, that's what you're going to have to deal with. And fortunately, he understands that's his world, and I get it. Everybody's thinking, oh, he's not playing like Dex because he hadn't got a sack. That's he's a freaking nose guard, you know what I mean? And that's what makes him unusual, that somebody would be saying he's not playing good because he hasn't got a sack. That doesn't even compute to a nose tackle, right? A nose tackle is a run defender and a push-the-pocket guy. That's what makes Dex special. And I tell him all the time, the sacks are going to come. They come in bunches. You're getting close. You're getting back there. And eventually, he's going to get one, and then they're just going to fall like crazy once that happens. That happens for every D lineman in the league that's looking to sack quarterbacks. But he's close. He's right there. He just got to keep doing what he's doing, and they'll happen for him.
You mentioned the double teams. Obviously, that's double teaming a game plan. You can't maybe stop that, but is there a way to mitigate that or free him up more? Or how do you go about doing it? I'm sure you'd rather him have some one-on-ones. How do you go about forcing that hand on them?
Well, there's times through the course of the game on third down that we're able to get in fronts and looks that we think can almost guarantee to give him a one-on-one, but you can't do it all the time. The down and distance plays a part. The formation that the offense puts out there plays a part. And we try to do the best job as we can as a coaching staff to try to find ways to manipulate to get him a one-on-one. And I always tell him, you may only get 4 or 5 of them in the game, and when you do, you got to make it work. So that's just his world.
You've said in the past, again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but the idea of, Dex is a nose tackle. If someone wants to take him away from being a nose tackle, you'd be like, well, I'm not going to allow that to happen. This is where he's at his best. But then when you get faced with those double teams, we have seen him slide a little bit. How do you strike that balance between you're trying to get him away, but you also know you're getting him away from the spot that you believe he's his best at?
Well, you seeing him move on third down. On third down, he moves out, he plays some 3 technique, he plays some 2-eye, and if we get in a bear look, he'll cover the center on third down. But on first and second down, he's playing his normal spot. He's covering the center, his normal spot. So on third down, we try to move him around a little bit to make them have to find him on third down. But we don't do that on first and second down. He plays his normal position on first and second down. So, so that's a little bit of the cat and mouse game that goes on, but some teams just say, hey, forget it. We're going to 97 no matter what, and so, he's handling it though. He'll be all right.
Does it get to a point where it's like, how do you fight the notion or the feeling of, well, I'm going to get doubled, so other guys are doing it. And I'm not saying he's doing that at all, but he's Dexter Lawrence.
Right.
You beat the double team. He's got to figure out ways. So is that kind of the part of the game now where, you guys are trying to figure out, he's trying to figure out, what do I have to do to go beyond that? They're not going to stop me even if they want to put 3 guys on.
Right, and that's his mentality, and I've kind of prepared him for that after year 1. Year 1 when he became so-called Dexter Lawrence, so I told him, be careful what you wish for. It's a different deal now, right? So you're going to get double teams all the time, And that's what ends up happening. And you just got to be comfortable with that. Say, forget it. I'm going to go beat two guys. So, I had it with John Randall. I had it with Leroy Glover. When you're an inside player and you're a guy like that, that's what you're going to get. And you can't run away from it. As part of the world that you live in. And he understands that. And he understands his game is bigger than just his effect on our team is bigger than just, a sack, And the biggest thing that can help him is for other guys to keep producing. Right. So if the other guys keep producing, then they got to play it a little bit more honestly. And that's the biggest thing that can help him is that the other guys that are on the field with him, continue to produce and get the quarterback on the ground.
Like timing and spacing
for
what the lineman can handle. But how does that play out? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, it is. Rushing inside is the time and space is different. There's less time and there's less space, so you're in the fight quicker. You got to have your hands ready to work quicker than you do on the edge, whether you're going power or speed. For Abdul or anybody in there, it's just having to be able to be comfortable with that difference in space and timing, which he is. But yeah, they're on you quicker. Now can he align off the ball and kind of run into it and kind of keep a little space? There's times for that. And there's times when he's just in a 3-point where he's in the fight right now. But yeah, that is the biggest difference for sure.
I know he played off ball early at Penn State, but did he do any of the hand in the dirt stuff inside, or is that something that you've added here?
That's something we've added here, but he did it, a little bit in college, rushing inside, and just as he's evolved, he sometimes feels comfortable doing it, based on what the call is, and sometimes he feels more comfortable in a 2-point,
How did you know that he could do that then? Obviously he's got
in the spring.
Yeah.
But you can see on film, you can see from the times he was in there, how he rushed, that he'd be able to do it here. And then when we just work all of our techniques and he got into a 3-point, he had success doing that. So, honestly, whatever they're comfortable in is good with me as a coach, 2-point, 3-point, even when they're on the edge. So, that changes by call, what his space and time demand is, where he's got to get to, what stance helps or hurts that. So some of that's involved, but, I've always thought whatever you're most comfortable in to get your job done, let it rip.
What's the balance there? Because he can do that, and you want to get all three guys on the field, but he's also really good off the edge, trying to strike that balance.
There is a balance. If his fastball is rushing on the edge, which he's really good at, we gotta get him some pitches out there, So, we're aware of that, but he also is gifted at rushing inside. So I think it's just being mindful of, is he getting enough reps on the edge? Last week was a very unique week with him playing off the ball, but I think moving forward, we'll try to get him some more rushes on the edge,
How do you coach? So you've done a little bit of it, not much though. How Parsons, when in Dallas, when they really unlocked him, he would just kind of walk around and never really stop until he kind of just picked where he ended up. Is that instinctive? If you gave a guy like Abdul that flexibility, would you give him the freedom to decide and everyone reacts off of that? Or does he just have to settle in where he settles in based on the scheme and the rush?
Yeah, I would say that's call specific. There are times when he's got the freedom to kind of move and roam, and then he knows where he has to get on the snap. And then there's times when he has to get to a certain place. In those moments, it's probably more of a rigid alignment. But there are times when, he's got the freedom to kind of move around and then ultimately get to where he has to go on the snap.
You might have answered this when I walked over, but there's been a couple of times where it seemed like he's almost pulled up. I know the one against Jaden was kind of a unique one, but it seemed like there's one on Sunday night. What is the thought process for him there, and what's the coaching point to have him maybe not do that? Or
the coaching point is, if the quarterback's in the act of throwing the ball, trying to disrupt the throw, and get a hand, in the arm angle that the quarterback's throwing. So I think the coaching point there is just, wait a little bit longer until the front hand comes off the ball, but I was telling Jordan, you never know what Mahomes is going to do with the ball in his hands. So you're a little bit, just trying to keep your feet moving the whole time and kind of just react as best you can.
What's he like to coach? He's a pretty confident dude.
Yeah, he's great. He loves ball and wants to win. So, that's anybody who has that, it's pretty easy to coach. So, he literally played inside backer with 3 practices. He hadn't done it in a year and a half. He had 3 practices and went out and played at a high level. So, that just tells you how natural of a football player he is.
What was that process like? Because obviously you were short there, but how did you come about staff aligning on that and him, going with it?
Well, again, he legitimately just wants to win football games. So, he just, wherever he has to play to help us win, he's open to do that. And that's where the need was last week. And then, you know, we're always all hands on deck as a coaching staff. So, you know, we got what we needed to in my room, and with Eggs weighing in and kind of getting some individual time and meeting time with them. So whatever it took, you know, we came up with and fired our best bullets. And, you know, I think he did a good job. I think he did a great job in the game, honestly, playing inside backer. So
it was probably one thing to play that on third down, but to play it on first and 10, yeah.
And you could function, you know, based on some coverage, you can function kind of just drop into a spot or read, run, pass, trigger, and then if it's pass, get to a landmark, you know. But I mean, when you have to play match zones and you know, you're working off the middle linebacker and seeing crossers and exchanges, it's hard. And he really, you know, in 3 days of practice was able to draw back on his experience from Penn State and then apply our scheme and did a heck of a job.